Most economies, regardless of size, depend on trade and export. But for Rwanda, limiting foreign imports and instead growing its domestic industries has been the government's focus for years. This strategy recently led a trade dispute between the country and the U.S. And now, because of a suspension of duty-free benefits for Rwandan textile imports to the U.S., Rwanda is looking to other markets.
Trade in second-hand garments and shoes is a big business for both sellers and buyers. Traders make good turnover, while customers get access to vintage clothes at rock-bottom prices. But Rwanda's government is unhappy about the stifling effect on the country's young textile industry. Since an announcement by the government to phase out imports of second-hand clothing, known as caguwa, from Western countries by 2019, and high tariffs imposed on American-used apparel, there have been divided opinions among Rwandans. The U.S.'s response, a suspension of duty-free benefit status for Rwandan clothes imports. The Rwandan government is seeking inroads into new markets.
Yes, we expect some Rwandan companies to be affected, particularly C&H. We have a plan for them. We have engaged them, we've discussed with them, and we will be helping them with the transition to new markets. We already know one of the investors in clothing is already looking at European buyers, which has already sent samples to Europe. And so we have a facility that we've put in place to help them within the transition to find new markets. And that support is going to include some of its financial support to pay for some of the cost they will incur to adjust to new markets.
The tiny landlocked country and its 3 East African neighbors, Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda, all increased duties on used clothing and shoes imports in 2016. In March 2017, a trade group representing U.S. used clothing exporters filed a petition arguing that the trade barrier violates the African Growth and Opportunity Act, a multinational agreement between the U.S. and Africa. Rwanda alone refused to back down, joining the likes of Canada, Mexico, the European Union and China, all of which have come close to trade wars with the United States.
When we look at domestic production of clothing, we've actually seen evidence that it has grown, which means that there is a correlation between discouraging second-hand clothing and increase in domestic production, which was the basis of the decision that we made. So it's actually, the evidence is actually showing that it's paying off. So we should just stick to growing our domestic production, which is what our leaders decided at the EAC when the decision was made. The second point that I wanted to also add on that is Rwanda remains very open to engaging the United States as well as any other country on mutually beneficial trade engagement.
Despite the suspension, Rwanda maintains its other duty-free benefits under the AGOA, America's flagship trade legislation for Africa, signed into law by President Bill Clinton in 2000, under which African nations enjoy trade benefits for undertaking reforms that favor duty-free U.S. market access.